Sorry.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for today's edition of Freshly Pressed 981. I am Valentine Ohu.
I am Ayomairo Essay. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Today, 27th of September 2021, we have a spirit of gratitude flowing through us, and I'd really like to appreciate everyone for tuning in, for joining us this morning, and to say thank you to Tunde Okufi for stepping in this morning.
Special thanks. Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Morning,
As
Valentine.
always.
Good morning.
you
Morning,
you
Ayo.
didn't see that coming. I think we need to do this more often.
Yes.
To really
Yes.
appreciate and celebrate our analysts.
Tunde Okufi has been an analyst since like 2015 or so, thereabouts. Cheta has been here forever.
From day one.
Cheta,
And
thank you so
he's
much.
quick to remind us.
Yeah, well, now it's
We are
up to
senior
this
enough.
Cheta, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. We appreciate you.
Yes, we do. Thank you. Please send a note of thanks and appreciation to our analysts. For today, we have Cheta Checkstar and Tunde Okufia Big Hoops on all social media platforms.
Yeah.
Send them a message. Just say that we really appreciate you. Thank you for doing this and just helping us to break down some of the toughest, biggest news stories from around Nigeria.
In the meantime, send in your contributions during the show to add to the conversation through WhatsApp. WhatsApp number is 0809 0981.
And we're streaming live on YouTube. So go on to youtube.com, search for Smooth 981 FM Lagos, and we are on your screens. You can send a message using the chat box as well. All right, let's get to our very first story for today. And Checkstar, Cheta, I'll be coming to you for this one. COVID-19, let's talk about that. There were many headlines actually in papers talking about COVID-19 from different angles, some from the monetary aspect. One headline I talked about a significant percentage of the GDP going to COVID-19. Another had talked about how many people had been vaccinated. However, the focus for today amidst this is from the Punch headlines. COVID-19 business booms. Inbound travelers bribe officials to evade tests. Experts warn of spike. Now, this is a very unfortunate reality that we face in Nigeria. Not surprising because, if there's corruption in other parts, why would this be excluded? Yeah. So it's a portrayal of our society. However, the danger here is the resultant effect on the spike in numbers of infections and deaths.
So here's the thing. We still are not testing nearly enough.
Yeah.
We've never for 1 second been able to do the systematic organized testing that has gone on in other countries, including the African countries. And because of that, we have no idea just how bad the pandemic is here. Like a lot of other countries in the tropical zone, especially on the African continent, we've somehow, through some luck, intervention of God, whatever you want to ascribe it to, we've managed to avoid the worst effects of COVID. When the second wave happened in India, for example, you could see, they literally ran out of graveyard space and they were burning bodies in makeshift crematoria. So it's not as if COVID could not have gotten really deadly. It did in India, for example. It did in Brazil. The city of Manaus was practically decimated by the pandemic. And it's the unfortunate thing for us, from my point of view, is the fact that we have become so complacent about it. Means that another wave could catch us, because classic human behavior, this is with all humans everywhere, and I'm going to reference the 1918 influenza pandemic, which happened here. 330 people, about 380, 40,000 people or so died here. It was the second wave that was deadly here, because people tend to naturally, when there's a strange disease moving around, people become cautious.
Yes.
But after a while, life has to get to normal. So it behoves the system to actually be on alert, take precautions and all of that. But here the system is completely broken down. The engine of Nigeria has knocked, whether we like it or not. It's just a fact of life. And because because of that, we don't know at what wave of this thing become really bad here.
Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me that officials are giving people taking bribes from people to do the test. They don't even need to really. I'll be frank. The reason I behaved in the last 3 trips that I left the country, the reason I behaved when I came back is that I knew that I would need to travel out sooner or later. So there's every incentive for me so that they won't seize my passport, because we are the people that are easier to track.
Yes.
But those who are not going anywhere, who maybe they just went for a holiday or for some meeting, traveling abroad is not a regular thing for them. They have every incentive to just, after all, it's not just 6 months that they seize your passport.
Yeah.
So, and seize passport doesn't mean that they will come to your house. The Nigerian state is not even capable of coming to everybody's house.
Yeah.
So they will just freeze your passport for 6 months. And then by the time you're ready to travel again, maybe 2 years down the line, the passport is unfrozen. But what really happens, look at people that I know who are coming from abroad, as in Nigerians resident outside. They come, they come for, so in the UK, for example, when you land, you have to isolate for 10 days.
Yes.
And they are calling you,
And they're calling you, yes.
they are making sure.
They do spot
Yeah,
checks.
you just disappear into the system. The Nigerian state doesn't know where you are. So all of this speaks to the lack of state capacity in this country, which is, I don't know.
Thank you. I just
But bottom line, the engine of Nigeria has knocked, like it or not. And I'm sorry to, for me, I actually lost hope in many respects in this country because of this pandemic. Because something, you see, that period when the whole world went into lockdown was a golden opportunity for us to actually fix the country. For the first time since independence, we were all forced, us the elite, they couldn't just get up and run. We were all forced to stay in here. Yeah, these people could not fix it.
All right, thank you very much, Cheta. We must continue to sound the alarm, even though we may not like. I think, oh, another story. Yes, it's killing people. Yesterday, 4 people were reported to have died. And don't forget that we don't have the full picture, because some people are not reporting. Some people are dying in quote of brief illness or malaria when it is indeed COVID, because they didn't get tested. I know 2 people in the past 2 to 3 weeks, who have lost their lives as a result of COVID-19, not people that I heard of, people that I know. So it is real, and we have to ensure that, especially for people, travelers who come in, you're careless. The next day you're going out and about. Yes, you still go and do your 7-day test, but you've already gone out, and if you had anything, you've spread it far and wide. We have to be more responsible.
We do. Let's take quick messages here. This one from Kazim. Kazim says, Cheta is one analyst I look forward to listening to. Thank you, Cheta. And thank you, Tunde. I like the way you hit the nail on the head every time. Your expression of exclamation, just unique. Thank you for that.
Thank you. We'll go on to our next story. Oil nears $80 with slim chances for more revenue due to theft. This report is in the Guardian. It just breaks down the facts and figures. That's Cheta, sorry. Cheta, let me move on to the next one. I'll come to you shortly. Tunde, let's go to the next story. Serap urges Buhari to publish names of suspected looters of 6 trillion naira NDDC funds. We're going to be talking about naming and shaming. And, beyond the details of this story, Tunde, once you break it down for us, I'd like you to also share what your thought is on naming and shaming, because we have another on Forex defaulters, etc. Do you think it's an effective way of curtailing crime in Nigeria, since, based on previous precedents, really?
Yeah, when the ideal is not available, then I guess the available becomes desirable, right? Very often, this is as far as it goes, supposedly naming and shaming people. But even the name, those who are, it's very often that the, very big, to borrow the term or use the term, big cats, or the most important people, VIPs, the sacred cows, it's very often that the names ever get into this list. So even those who get named and shamed are not in that circle. But it's what's available to us. It's like throwing red meat to the people. If you understand, when people are crying and shouting, so they won't say we're not doing anything. Here's a list. But then of all the people that know, of all the lists that we've had, of all the naming and shaming that we've gone through in the past, how often has it, gone into anything? If not, it just creates notoriety for the people. We still see them in society. We still see them in the parties. We still see them, carrying out their political activities. Still get government appointments, So it's almost in our face, but in the short term, it sort of appeases the people. Now, which is for me the key thing, like syrup is where it's so we're so almost helpless. They're first asking for name these people. When it should be like, when are you going to prosecute these people?
Yeah.
When are we going to know? Because it's alleged, right? Let's know when are we going to know what really happened, and who was guilty of what, and when would there be real consequence for that? In the place where we're begging for to at least know their names, it's indicative of some of the failings that Chester had spoken to. Now, a whole 6 trillion, since 2000 to 2019 is what's been allegedly misappropriated or stolen. In Sarap's words, it's the only way to describe it is grand corruption in the NDDT. And you know why it's particularly disappointing is that this commission, the NDC, was created because of the failings of central government. Ideally, we shouldn't have commissions like this.
Yes.
If the nation state functioned as it should. Now, the ameliorative, the bandage that you created in itself, ended up or has proven to be just as corrupt, if not as corrupt and ineffective as the problem was there to fix, right? It was supposed to, plug the holes. Central government is too far. This commission can look at the issues that are pertinent to the region, to the Niger Delta, and, intervene directly. But in the end, it's become a thing for settling the guys, keeping a certain part of the country happy. And the people, again, which is what Sarah points out, that the people are the ones that lose out. We don't benefit from the enormous oil wealth. Ordinary Nigerians have to settle with naming and shaming in a sense.
So what's the way forward? So if we're saying to be honest, I'm a bit in between because, like you mentioned, they're suspects. If you name and shame someone who is not actually guilty, well, then how do you then
even problematic in
how
itself.
do you clean the image of that person? So what's the way forward? How do we get our government to be accountable for things like this? What's the role of the legislature? Where do they play? What role do they play?
It's trial by media. It's what I'd like to see, if you're asking, is real action. As I pointed out, real things need to be done. We need to ask and demand for real action. The question is, we've been demanding for a long time on many different topics, but nothing moves.
The truth of this is, for some weeks now, I because I haven't gotten concrete evidence to prove this, I've heard more than a few people say, "Oh, you see, this construction work that just resumed is because they're going after them. Government has started going after them." If that's reality, and government actually starts going after these people who have failed on their contracts, after being paid, you see things working. You now realize that certain things have been put in place, but sheer individual will has failed is the reason why we're in the rut.
The more likely reason is 2023.
All right.
All right, let's continue with more stories with Cheta.
Cheta, oil nears $80 with slim chances for more revenue due to theft. We have this despite ongoing amnesty and other measures to address crude theft in the Niger Delta region, and over 32 billion naira paid between January and July on pipeline security and maintenance costs. Nigeria's production challenges appear unabated as frequent pipeline sabotage is expected to see the country's average crude loss surpass 200,000 barrels a day.
I don't know what to say, to be honest. Back in July 2018, I was interviewed by Bloomberg to talk about this commodities, and I said it's up to at the time it was up to 7%. And I remember there was a visceral reaction. I got really insulted out of that when that interview was published. Only for about 4 months later, the National Economic Council issued a statement and said it was more than 10%. So even me, I underestimated it. And of course, I mean, I work in an organization that cannot have the kind of depth of data that the government has. So what we can do is just indicative. A lot of the information information that we have indicates that a lot of the oil theft is essentially settlement. It's the way of keeping the peace. So it's done with a nod and a wink.
Structural problems.
And many of the people who should otherwise be guarding these installations, we're talking of especially Nigerian Navy Central Command, are in on it. They actually, not just do they look away, but they actively participate. That's one. Number two, the pipeline infrastructure was laid before any of us sitting around this table was born, and hasn't been maintained since. The amount of waste that goes through all of that is mind-boggling. So that is the second biggest problem. As of the time that I spoke with Bloomberg, the biggest problem in my mind was the infrastructure problem. But insecurity or collusion has, because it has become a case of, and that's like the story we talked about and all of that. It's a case of when impunity is just allowed, everybody goes in on it, because at that point, even those who are trying to be good look like idiots. So consider when we are in traffic here in Lagos and you are trying to do the right thing, obey the signs, and then you see all the danfo and people with escorts doing nonsense and getting away with it. You look very foolish. So every incentive is there to join them, and that is the bottom line of Nigerian society. We reward the wrong things. So back to this, back to the meat of this. Oil is getting to $80 a barrel. If memory serves me, the budget benchmark is about $42 a barrel for the 2021 budget, but predicated on 2 million barrels production a day. You have a situation where oil is almost double of that, but officially we only produce 1.3 million barrels per day, and at least 10% of that disappears. So which means that production is somewhere around 1.1 million barrels a day. How will you balance your budget? And then let's not even talk about the debts. The government has found it easier to go and borrow money rather than try to fix all the systemic problems. Let's talk about even, so you see this mentality of leakages comes even in the tax. So take VAT as an example, or stamp duties. All state governments have sued the federal government onto stamp duties, only for the federal government to, without any shame, come out to say that, we've not been able to collect stamp duties, or we've not been able to account for stamp duties since 2018 or 2016. They said those are your leakages. So it's the same mentality. Nothing will change. It's the same mentality. We are losing from here, we are losing from there, and then instead we're harassing people.
But that's not all we're losing or seem to be losing. About 330,000 Nigerian refugees are said to be languishing in neighboring countries due to the insurgency and armed banditry. There's a report here from The Guardian that names some of those people refugees coming from the parts of the northeast, northwest. Doesn't come as a surprise here. It's from the insurgency. But looking at neighboring countries, the chart of the events, leading up to the insurgency starting over 11 years ago, Cheta, what would you say would be the best way the government could tackle this issue?
I don't even know anymore. It's all about the economy. See, all of Nigeria's insecurity problems can be linked to a failed economy, a broken economy. I think at this point it's important for me to define what is a refugee and what is an IDP. Because there's the temptation to look at this headline and say, 330,000 Nigerians. There are 2.6 million IDPs in the country. Nigeria is number 6 in terms of IDPs, internally displaced people in the world. An IDP is simply a refugee that has not crossed national boundaries. For example, when there are certain villages in Guma local government area in Benue State or in Agatu that are completely empty now. The people have all fled. But because Benue, especially that Agatu and Guma, are as in they don't share boundaries with any country, those people fled in an outward direction towards Kogi, towards Nasarawa, towards Abuja. They are IDPs. Now, when you have people in places like Mongono, Kukawa, and all of that who get attacked by Boko Haram, and again, typical thing, they flee in a radial pattern, but away from where the attacks are coming. The attacks are coming from a southerly direction. So when those people flee, they flee in a radial northerly direction, which means that they cross the border into Cameroon, into Chad, into Niger, define Niger. Same thing. Just yesterday, or was it the day before, the Nigerian army around not too far from Sokoto actually rescued some Nigerian soldiers from bandits. What about the civilians who ran from those same so-called bandits? They, at the moment they cross that border, they become refugees. So we have a huge internally displaced people problem. We have a huge refugee problem.
Yeah.
330,000 Nigerians in countries that are desperately poorer than us. It's no joke.
Yeah.
We have refugees from Ogun State in Benin, the Benin Republic.
Yeah.
It's a problem. And as long as we don't try to fix our economy, we will keep getting all of this. But what do? We are blaming Abuki effects for our economic problems.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that robust analysis. Let's look at a few messages. Chiluzo or Barry Ujuma, thank you for your message. We see that. Oyewale says on YouTube, can we stop this wave scare? It's time to start telling our own story in Nigeria using the reality on ground, or keep copying the narratives from abroad. Cholera is killing us more than COVID. Oyewale, they say if you don't experience, if rain is not falling in your house, does not mean that rain is not falling elsewhere. All right. So let's not, join in this bandwagon of knocking something that we haven't personally experienced as to mean that that's the general narrative. COVID is real. Ayo clearly stated that it's people who she knows or she knew that passed. It wasn't hearsay. So I'm sure you didn't hear that part of what she said.
All right. Thank you very much. Move on to our next story.
This one here from Premium Times. Tunde says, we have adequate structures to successfully transmit election results. That's from the Independent National Electoral Commission. I like how they clarified this thing, saying, we see, this is me paraphrasing, we see how you react to us when we say e-transmission, but let's clearly define terms. E-transmission is not e-voting. There's a difference, a clear difference. But do you see this even swaying the stance of the executive or the assembly, National Assembly, in terms of accepting e-transmission of results?
Exactly. I said the first thing that needs to be addressed, first of all, is the electoral law. The Electoral Act needs to be, amended to even allow any of this in the end, because it should be a damn shame if we conduct an election. The results will always be contested, and then it falls down on a thing like this. But speaking about transmission, since we're very clear about transmission, look, we have existing infrastructure today to transmit the election results. It would require, we can send text messages amongst each other. I'm not saying election results are text messages, but I'm breaking it down as simple as that we have the infrastructure to do this. There are conversations around the type of the telco infrastructure, data infrastructure that we have in place would impact it. Is it 2G, 3? What we have today is more than sufficient for the transmission of electronic data. There's no debate.
Can I just say that even WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, so isn't even secure enough?
Look, infrastructure-wise for the transmission, everything is in place. Then the endpoints, the sorts of systems that you use to collect the data before verify people. Those things need to be built, and it's straightforward. We even have the IT capacity and expertise within the country to build those things, and then we can include the end-to-end encryption. We can include all sorts of protocols to prevent the data from being supposedly manipulated. But for me, it's not. Since while we're on this topic, it's not just about the transmission. For me, there's no point in us even doing electronic voting at all if it's not going to bring about transparency, right? Because the ideal thing for us, there's a reason why exit polls are a thing, right? Parties put representatives, at all polling stations. This happened in June 12th, by the way, such that as each polling unit conducts the election, someone takes the results in that center. And if you have a national network, you know what the results are at the end of the day. So what is announced by the center must tally. Very often what we have here is that the results of the exit polls don't match with what's announced at the center. Very often because we beat and chase people away. And the supposed representatives from different parties, the ballot box snatching, all sorts of things that happen, makes it very difficult for us to do exit polling properly. If it's done electronically, the exit polls should be a lot more accurate, because people can say, okay, this was the results recorded at my center. We all saw it. And there should be no case of, there was, something was invalidated or that happened. It should tally with what registers at the center, So it needs to bring about transparency. If it doesn't bring about transparency, I think it then just not scare anyone. It just sort of makes it potentially, people will continue to worry that it becomes easier to manipulate, Remember the debates and discussions from the last one when you say there's one server that someone manipulated or didn't manipulate, and that story sort of fell away. So that for me, that's the more important thing. But electronic voting, I think it should be considered. We should look for all sorts of ways to save money. It logistically,
saves money.
Yeah, I believe, it saves money on the logistics and planning anyway, if you understand what I mean. But in Nigeria,
and even going by your
really
clear explanation, it makes it even more credible. You're able to every contributor from the transmission, people who are transmitting to those who receive at the center, clearly see the results from both ends. And they said it will be published on the INEC result viewing portal, which means
and it should be in real time.
In real time, yeah.
If they really want to be transparent, it should be real time.
As simple as opening the spreadsheet, take a snapshot and posting it on that portal. Everybody gets to see it. So when you're announcing, everybody's just looking at the screen. Like it's as if you're calling a strange figure.
There's nothing that politicians can't do and or say. I mean, look at the last election in the US. It was electronic voting, but all sorts of debates around it.
Conjecture.
And conjecture in a mature democracy. So you can imagine us. So they just need to do it properly.
Speaking of which, in terms of development and what's expected in the coming world, Lagos State Governor Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu said towards the end of next year, into the year after, so last quarter of 2022 into the first quarter of 2023, you'll be able to see Lagos Blue and Red rail lines commencing operations fully. What are your thoughts, please?
If I didn't live in Lagos, it would probably be easier for this story to impress me, right? And at the top of the show, you mentioned how long I've been doing this with you guys, so I can count the number of times I've had to talk about the red line, blue line, yellow line, purple line, whatever the lines, right?
Yes.
And each time we talk about it is, how it's going to be ready in the next quarter, give us 6 months, 8 months, always, that's always the story. To me, like I also mentioned at some point, elections are in 2023. We're almost at the end of this year. They only have 1 year left, sort of, to, as people say, show working, at least some things they can point to. The blue and red rail line and the transport blueprint for Lagos State is beautiful, but unfortunately, it's still a far-off dream. Let's be honest. We live in the city. We see how far they've gone. They're promising yet again, that it will be ready in Q3 2023, first quarter 2023, right? No problem. Let's see. That just coincides with just about when elections are about to start. So let's see if they actually do deliver. The governor goes on to say that construction is going on as scheduled.
Yeah.
He should have added, but not to schedule. This has not happened to schedule. It may be going on as scheduled, but it's not going on to schedule. Yeah. Clearly,
it's like in time and on time.
Yeah, do you understand? It clearly is not going to. It's not going to schedule, but we'll see. First quarter 2023. It's just land smack right in time for election. Let's see.
Well, that may actually
the incentive. We'll see now. It hadn't been incentive for them in the past how many years.
That's a good one for you to
but it'll be a good
vote.
one.
Let's tie our votes to that. So if you can give us blue, red, blue, then APC. Well, yeah. Fabian from Request says where there is no enforcement of resolutions and punishment of defaulters, lawlessness will continue. A couple of private schools were shut down in Lagos when students who came from holidays resumed in school without isolating and later tested positive after developing symptoms.
Ike from Isola says they're quick to want to name and shame MDDC pointers, but protect the names of Boko Haram sponsors. Interesting. Double
Double
standards.
standards. Prince says, naming and shaming in Nigeria. Shame left Nigeria WhatsApp group long time ago. Is it not in this country that ex-convicts are welcome with fanfare and ashwebi? Nothing shames anyone in Nigeria. In fact, being named as corrupt or indicted for anything is now PR.
I hope it's not.
I'm
Just
saying,
wishful
I
thinking,
wish
just
I
say,
could not, I didn't agree with Prince. I wish I didn't.
Yeah.
But
it's 8 o'clock. But in 10 minutes, we're back. We'll open up the phone lines for you to call in, please. 0144899181. Here's a message that's interesting from Akintoye. It says, thank you, Tunde and Chata, for and other analysts. They've offered insightful perspectives over the years. Thank you to Aya and Val. You make it all come together nicely.
thank
Tunde
you
Kofi,
very much.
thank you so much. Let's engage him on the conversation, him and Chata at CHXTA. Tunde Kofi is at Big Coops. Stay with us here on Smooth Breakfast because we'll be back in 10 minutes.